And the Greeks, obviously, the Macedonian Greeks were there as well. There's a little bit of wiggle room. So she was Greek. There was a little bit of wiggle room because they don't really know who her mother was, but her mother almost certainly was either Greek or Egyptian. They say she might have had some Iranian blood. But here's the other part, and this is going to be controversial, but it's just true. The Egyptians weren't black either.
How can you say that?
Pop culture, an expression we've all heard about at some point. It's a word that often finds its way into conversations, adding intrigue and interest to various topics. But do we really understand it? Personally, I have a vague idea of what it is, but for the sake of this project, I have decided to get a bit deeper into it. According to the Oxford Dictionary, pop culture is defined as the modern popular culture transmitted via the mass media and aimed particularly at younger people. Now it seems a bit clearer. Within that definition, there are a few main words that come up. These include modern, culture, mass media, and then younger people. To summarize, pop culture, as defined, serves as a conduit for modern cultural transmission to the younger generation through mass media. But what is a culture? A culture is defined as the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. But it is also defined as the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. In other words, a culture encompasses all types of manifestations of human intellectual achievements. It is a set of practices, accomplishments, and even beliefs of the people. Thus, pop culture encompasses the collective practices, achievements, and beliefs of a large group of people. I insist on that because of a specific word appearing in the definition of pop culture. And the word is younger people. When we target the beliefs of younger people, it means that we mold the beliefs of an entire population. Why? Because young people are the future of the world. And their beliefs will mold those of their children, who will pass it to theirs, and so on. So, within a single generation, an entire population can adopt a specific new set of beliefs. These beliefs ultimately shape the functioning of society. The third main word in the list is modern. The definition clearly implies a modern, popular culture. And this detail is crucial. Allow me to explain why. They could have simply said culture instead of modern. But they specified modern. It means that through time, there are differences in the culture. Changes. Meaning that the pop culture at a specific time is not necessarily the same during another generation. Which, if we follow the definition of culture, means that the practices, accomplishments, and beliefs of an entire group of people at a large scale can vary according to periods. But how? And this leads us to the last word, which is mass media. In other words, mass media influences the practices, accomplishments, and beliefs of the entire population at a large scale. And this is done based on an agenda that only the owners of these media know. But what is mass media? It is defined as the main means of mass communication, such as broadcasting, publishing, and the internet, considered collectively. Now you may be wondering, why am I talking about this? Last year, I made a video entitled Africa Has a Soft Power Deficiency. In that video, I explained how the lives of Africans and black people all over the world were impacted the way they were portrayed on mainstream media. A topic that I have further developed on later videos. But are we talking about this? Well, with the introduction, we've exposed pop culture's influence in shaping the perception of the masses. And a few days ago, I have noticed something a bit strange. Well, I have noticed it a long time ago, but a few days ago, I have decided to talk about it with my audience. I have even asked you about it on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Why is Cleopatra often depicted as the face of ancient Egypt? But let's delve a bit deeper.
And the Greeks, obviously, the Macedonian Greeks were there as well. There's a little bit of wiggle room. So she was Greek. There was a little bit of wiggle room because they don't really know who her mother was, but her mother almost certainly was either Greek or Egyptian. They say she might have had some Iranian blood. But here's the other part, and this is going to be controversial, but it's just true. The Egyptians weren't black either.
How can you say that?
I know that Egypt is in Africa, but the Egyptians were not black. And the reason we know this, if you look at their statues, they colored and painted some of their statues. They weren't painted black. They colored the skins of the pictures of them on the walls of tombs that we're familiar with. Most of them are kind of reddish, looking like pretty much my color, probably swarthy, but they weren't black.
Have you ever noticed that in pop culture, people love to represent ancient Egypt based on completely random standards? These standards are so arbitrary, yet wield such influence that many of us have believed at some point or still believe that they are an actual representation of reality. I don't know if you realize. Let me show you. You know, ancient Egypt is a real civilization that has existed. It is not a mythical world straight from the books of George W. or Martin. It has existed, meaning that there are artifacts and all types of evidence to support its existence. But have you noticed that for some reason, in pop culture, there is a complete disregard of all evidence? It is as if when talking about ancient Egypt, reality did not matter. As if pop culture preferred to make it into whatever they wanted. Let me break it down for you. For example, we have actual representations of the Sphinx, magnificent in the land of Egypt. But the actors of our pop culture always decide to completely disregard this reality and chose to depict something that has nothing to do with that reality. However, it doesn't end there. We also have depictions of pharaohs. Consider Pharaoh Amenhotep III, for instance. We have so many busts and depictions of him. They are also extremely consistent. Evidence that these were not just some random portrayals. They were inspired by something real. But when we look at pop culture, we see this. Once again, there is a deliberate choice to make up and promote a completely random depiction that have absolutely nothing to do with reality. Or the last one that I've noticed that really shocked me. The fact that we have hundreds of known true indigenous pharaohs. Powerful people who literally built that civilization. Who invented and established its culture, its spirituality. Who built the pyramids and temples. But many times when pop culture decides to represent ancient Egypt, often they select Cleopatra. And strangely, it does not really bother people. But at the same time, the same people will complain and say that she wasn't Egyptian and that she was Macedonian.
And the Greeks, obviously, the Macedonian Greeks were there as well. There's a little bit of wiggle room. So she was Greek. There was a little bit of wiggle room because they don't really know who her mother was, but her mother almost certainly was either Greek or Egyptian. They say she might have had some Iranian blood.
Obviously, there is some form of double standard. A very vicious double standard that keeps leading us to the exact same result all the time. It is the manifestation of a deep hypocrisy that is very common online. An illusion of goodwill, of anti-racism, of a so-called desire for historical accuracy which is in fact deeply rooted in the wickedness of the most abject form of racism. I talk about it in the following video. And did you know that Cleopatra was closer to Pizza Hut than the Great Pyramids? If I ask you, which element between the Great Sphinx, Cleopatra, and the Arab Republic of Egypt is more representative of Kemet, the ancient civilization? What would be your response? Pause the video and give me your response in the comments below, please. And let me know why. I am really curious to know your opinion on that. To me, the answer is simple. It is the Great Sphinx. Why? Because it is closer to the emerging years of that civilization. It was built during one of its greatest golden ages. It was built at the effigy of one of its most impactful ruler, family, and dynasty. In other words, it is a pure product of that civilization. Certified purebred Kemite. But strangely, when people in pop culture want to talk about ancient Egypt, often they bring up the Greco-Roman period with the Ptolemies and especially Cleopatra. It is as if the history of ancient Egypt revolved around that. You will hear people claim that they love ancient Egypt, but as soon as you look deeper you will notice that they don't. They love ancient Egypt, but without the actual Egyptians. Their perception of ancient Egypt is actually a Greco-Roman Egypt, a biblical one, and sometimes a completely fantasized one. If you don't believe me, here is an example. The latest most impactful work involving ancient Egypt in pop culture is Assassin's Creed Origins. It takes place in Egypt. But guess during which period? Indeed, the Greco-Roman one. In other words, it is using the entire ancient Egyptian vibe, but with Europeans in it. We are never presented with ancient Egypt in its African context. I think I have never seen any major pop culture work involving ancient Egypt accurately representing Africans in their own kingdom. There must always be the involvement of Europeans. It is as if people don't want to see non-white characters having lead roles. And this reminds me of the latest debate around Assassin's Creed Shadows, which takes place in Japan. At the announcement of the game, there has been a lot of protests against the fact that Yasuke, also known as the Black Samurai, appeared in the game. People went as far as editing the Wikipedia page of Yasuke to rewrite his story to back up their complaints. The truth is that Yasuke is not even the main character in that game. The actual character is indeed Japanese. But this drama has highlighted the real problem that everyone is pretending not to see. There is a huge number of people who have issues with seeing black people as main characters. The case of Yasuke is perfect because Yasuke is not even the main character. So it highlights the fact that these people are trying to use the argument of historical accuracy to hide the fact that they are simply racists and don't want to see black people play powerful and positive roles. Especially positive leadership roles. They don't complain when the black main character plays a slave, a servant, a dealer, etc. But when the role involves something positive and powerful with a lot of human dignity, they lose their minds. And that's also what we see regarding ancient Egypt. People love it. But people love everything built by Africans, but only when the people enjoying it are white. It is a very common form of racism. We love what you do, but not you. For example, the majority of movies' cast are clearly white. Black people can watch all these movies, even those with entire white casts, without even flinching. They will follow the story and can even identify with the characters despite the skin color difference. And you know why? Because black people see non-blacks as human beings just like them. But unfortunately, the contrary is not always true. That's why today people always complain when some diversity is added to the mix. Don't get me wrong, I'm not into turning traditional white characters into black ones. But we must learn to make the difference. In the case of ancient cultures like Kemet, the reality is that they were people of color. They were black. They were Africans. But a lot of people don't want that reality. It is as if they can't stand that story being told unless they can usurp that identity. And this is a topic I fully developed in my previous video. I highly recommend you to watch it. You will understand the psychological mechanisms behind this behavior. That's also how cultural appropriation works. Take this hairstyle for instance. It has been worn by Africans for millennia and was labeled ghetto. But as soon as some white influencer took it, it became trendy, original, etc. And some even ended up claiming that they invented it. Do you see the problem now? So, that's exactly the same concept with ancient Egypt and Cleopatra. She is used as some type of Trojan horse to silently appropriate the African identity due to the Greek invasion. But at the same time, she must remain completely detached from the indigenous population and remain 100% white European. Which is exactly what I told you earlier. It is a perfect manifestation of the "we love what you create, but not you." Or "we love what you do, but only on us." When it benefits us. It's not love, it's veiled predation. But doesn't that remind you of something else? That's one of the main rules in racism, colonization, slavery, etc. It is always a group of superior white foreigners who appropriate other people's properties and then rule over them while forming a pure white upper class. The non-white constitute the lower class and are completely dehumanized. Their lives don't matter. It is another manifestation of colonialism. It is neocolonialism. As I always say, the lands have been colonized, but the image and the history of Africans have also been colonized. Africans' human dignity has been stripped from them to the point that most people can't even perceive them in positions of power that require intelligence and advanced skills. But when it is about sports, slavery, and all other negative stereotypes, then they are rewarded. That's what pop culture promotes. Unfortunately, we need to end the video here because of YouTube's censorship policies and some technical issues. This is only 50% of the content. To view the full, uncensored video, please visit our Patreon page where it's available exclusively. Interested in discovering all the dark psychological tricks being used on us and where this video will lead? Join us on Patreon for an unfiltered exploration of the truth. Support our mission by becoming a patron today. You can find the link in the description below and in the comments. Thank you for watching and supporting our channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're unable to join Patreon right now, no worries, I understand. My goal has always been to freely educate, but it requires significant investment of time, money, and effort. Patreon is a way to maintain our freedom of speech since most platforms don't allow us to share our truth. After years of giving back, I need your support to continue serving our community. Let's discuss the video's content in the comments. What are your thoughts on what you just watched? If you enjoyed this video, you'll find the following ones equally enriching. Thank you once again for watching. See you in the next one.